Hello, everyone. Welcome to The Path of Me. I'm your host, Wendy Hutchinson, and today's guest is just a phenomenal and inspirational woman. I'm so honored to call her a friend. Her name is Liliana Hernandez, and just to give you a little brief intro, I'm going to read a little bit here because I couldn't memorize it all. She is a licensed marriage and family therapist. She's the Associate Clinical Director of a nonprofit agency that provides mental health services to the community. She's also an adjunct professor at a local university, providing courses in community mental health and group supervision for the Latino Family Therapy Group, where she's an alumni. So she's just a woman of so many talents, but when you hear her story, you're going to be so inspired by how far she's come after overcoming so much adversity. So welcome, beautiful Liliana.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining me today. I think we have so much to cover. I really wanted to start with where your beginnings are. I know you're first generation American. Your parents came, or your mom came. I don't know if she came with your dad or not, but they came from Mexico. So maybe you can start there.
Sure, definitely. And thank you so much. I'm so honored. My mom was originally from Guadalajara, Mexico, and or Jalisco. And her mom migrated over to Tijuana. And when my mom was about 15. So at the age of 20, she found out she was pregnant. And of course, the stigma. So she had to
Catholic.
A Catholic, a Latina, the whole shebang. Mm-hmm. And so she realized she needed to leave to not bring upon shame on the family. So she came over to the United States, where there was an aunt, and she came here 3 months pregnant and had me here in beautiful California, where I was born and raised in Pacoima, in the surrounding area of like San Fernando, Silmar, Mission Hills area. Mm-hmm. So yeah, just when she told me that story, I was just so inspired, and it just kind of really brought me back to how courageous she was, being young,
20
alone.
years old.
20 years old. What do we know at 20, right?
Nothing. We think we know everything, but we know nothing.
That too. So, I was born here, and a couple of years later, she remarried, and she had my brother, and later on my sister. My sister's 10 years younger than us, and grew up in the San Fernando Valley.
Yeah, and so I met you through the Life Purpose Institute, our life coaching program. We're both life coaches, certified life coaches, and I'm so excited to meet you because I loved you from the moment I met you. But you have 2 beautiful sons, and it sounds like you had them quite young. Would that be accurate?
So talk about, and the work that we do, I often talk about the multi-generational piece. And at 20, I found myself pregnant and moved in with my boyfriend at the time and father of both of my children. So we had my oldest, and about a year later, we were pregnant with my second son. And, we ended up getting married, as a Latina should. And
good girl should.
good. So, it was kind of backwards, but, my mom was very supportive, and she said, if this is for you, it's for you. And if it's not, I'll help you through it. So make a decision. And so we got married. We had our second son, and about 30 days after his birth, it had always been, on and off. It was good. And, he was young as well. And not that young. He's 5 years older than me, but he still wanted to go out. Yeah, he wanted to go out, and he wanted to party, and he wanted to be hanging out with his friends. So 30 days after my baby's born, I thought, I can't do this anymore. I already have 2 to raise, 3. I'm drawing the line.
Draw the line.
So, I love the guy to the day. He's one of my closest friends. He's always, he ended up becoming very involved with the boys' life after a couple of years. Awesome. And to this day, we call each other, and, he comes over and he takes care of some stuff in my home. And
that's beautiful.
Yeah. So we became really good friends.
Sometimes we're just in a different space and time, and it just sounds like he just wasn't ready to take on all that responsibility. It doesn't mean he was a bad person. He just wasn't ready, wasn't there.
Yes, I agree. And one of the things I look back on, and after some of the coaching that we've done, I've realized he came into my life for a reason.
Absolutely.
Without a doubt. And those 2 babies would not have been born without that.
Right.
And I'm like, if nothing else, and again, he's a great guy. Yeah. Not the guy.
The biggest gift were those children that you brought.
Definitely.
To just enrich your life every day. I mean, your kids are phenomenal, handsome, just loving.
Thank you.
I can't say enough about them. I met them personally, but from what you've shared, they're just a reflection of their mama.
Aww.
Of course, they're going to be amazing.
Yes.
So here you are. You're a single mom now with 2 babies. Where did you go from there?
You
were so young.
I was. By the time I was divorced, I was 22, almost maybe 23, and I'm counting like marriage time.
Yeah.
Short time. But I was depressed for a minute. I was really trying to figure out, what to do with my life. I wasn't working the whole time that I had my first son till I had my second son, so I didn't have any income behind me. I did end up having to get on government assistance. Sure. And luckily during that time, I had applied for an apartment in a complex that was also government assistance. So I became blessed with that. And I thought, what am I going to do with myself? Well, I have 2 babies. I need to get a job. I need to do something. So I went back to school. I had, I should backtrack quickly and say that when I was 18, I did go to college. I got a degree in accounting. So my fallback has always been taxes, accounting, helping people file taxes and stuff like that. So that was beneficial, but I went back to school and started trying to figure out what I wanted to do, and ended up getting 2 associate degrees while I was there, and being mentored by, for me, one of the strongest counselors on campus that basically said, what are you doing here? Get out, get your bachelor's. And I was like, no. And he says, look, you'll thank me later. Go. So he basically guided my courses to get into a university, and I did. I went to the University of Northridge, and I graduated with my bachelor's.
Wow. How did you do that with 2 kids? And you probably had to work too, to some degree,
I did.
Meet. How did you manage all of that?
So, I have to tell you, this counselor, Mr. Enrique Gonzalez, love him to this day. We're great friends. He was very instrumental in making sure that I was there for my kids, and just the information he gave me, the knowledge. He says, you have to apply for, financial aid. He broke it down for me, which I do often for a lot of my students, is that if you're applying for financial aid, if you do the math, it's basically getting like a part-time job with the assistance that they're getting you. So he says, look at it that way, squirrel your money away for things that you need, apply for the federal work study program. I got a job on campus. My kids were juggled between me getting up in the morning, taking them to the daycare on campus, me going to my classes, doing some of my work study, picking them up. When they were really young, they would sometimes go to my mom. And then I would have a part-time job in the evening, January through April, doing taxes. So I would work from 6 to 9. So a lot of my family were really helpful in like really picking up some of that, like babysitting duties. Grandma was great.
Huge.
So I was so blessed. But again, without that prior information of like, this is how you do it, work study, I had no idea. I was the first to go to college in my family.
Wow.
So
amazing.
I have a lot of that information.
So proud of you. So incredible. But isn't it amazing what the influence one person can have on your life, and them believing in you and showing you that you're so much more than you think you are?
Oh my gosh.
Oh God.
And in the moment you don't see that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Looking back, you're like, oh my God, you just don't know.
Changed your life.
So much. So much. So I got my bachelor's, and I would often go to him and be like, oh, you made me do this, and now I don't know how to write this paper, whatever it was. Because I didn't have mentors to go to and help me.
Foundation.
Right. I didn't, right? So he was often my go-to, and he would help me through stuff. And then there I am. I have a bachelor's, and I get my first job in the mental health world. I was hired, and I started at the front desk, and I was doing intake. And I thought, okay, this is better than a 9-to-5, $10.50 an hour kind of job.
Sure.
And I didn't really know a lot about mental health. I got my degree in sociology. And so I worked there for a couple of years, realizing, wow, this is really interesting. The counseling world, therapy, I would often sit in certain meetings, and I thought, oh, this is really interesting. And I became really good friends with two of my coworkers that were going back to school to get their master's. And they said, hey, we're going to go to this orientation. Want to come? And I was like, more school?
Yeah.
I'll go with you guys, right? So I was like, wow, this school is awesome. Just their technique, hands-on, day one. I was like, this is doable. And sure enough, we all three started. And there was that foundation of like, they were so instrumental in not only for me getting through, but just helping each other and being very supportive.
I was going to say, to have each other to lean on through the whole process must have been so incredible, because it sounds like you kind of did the beginning, the bachelor's on your own. You had this one mentor, but you were really kind of in it by yourself.
It felt that way, yes.
Yeah. Even though you had support, there were moments that you were probably like, I want to tap out. That's much. I mean, you got 2 kids, you got work, you're trying to do all of this. I can only imagine how stressful it was for you.
Oh my God. The bachelor's was really stressful, just in the sense that I knew in that time frame, as young as I was, and I look back now, I was like, where'd you get that idea from? Is I didn't want to abandon my kids. I didn't want them to feel that somebody else raised them. I didn't want them to feel that they had no life with mom. So they were in sports.
So much pressure you had on yourself to be this, not only trying to better yourself, but to be this amazing mom at the same time.
Well, and I think part of that came with, my mom was a stay-at-home mom. So she was always there for us. Right. So there was this part of like, wait, I need to do some of that. Right. So they were in sports. They were constantly in sports throughout the year. So whether it was soccer, baseball, or basketball.
That's practices.
I was the mom at those practices with the book in her hand. Yes, baby. Good job.
Multitasking as we all do.
Yes, definitely.
Wow.
Yes. Wow. So going into my master's degree and having the support of Julie and Abby, which I love, and we're still friends to this day, my kids were a little bit older, so schooling was a little bit longer. They stayed, they had additional activities, but for me, it was the same struggle. I was a full-time job, full-time school, a part-time internship.
Oh my gosh.
January through April, I was still doing taxes. So, I was just trying to make sure all of it happened.
I guess it's one day at a time when you have that much on your plate. Like, how else can you manage it? If you sat down and thought about everything that had to be done, you'd probably bring you to your knees.
You're right. One day at a time.
Yeah.
Absolutely right.
So that must have been incredible to finish that program and that off your plate. I mean, you must have felt so accomplished having done that.
It took me a minute to really take it in. When I look back, it was just sort of like do, go to class, write a paper, sport activity, you know,
and let's not forget, I mean, kids get sick, things happen, you know, and life happens. So it wasn't like they were just going along without incident or accident while you're going through this process.
You're right.
Right? I mean, things happen, and then you're like, oh my gosh, I have a final, and my kid is sick, and what am I going to do?
I took my oldest to class with me on the day of one of my tests, whether it was a final or just a regular test, because the daycare program wouldn't take him because he was sniffly, and they won't take him here if they're a little sick because they don't want to. I understand they don't want to get everybody else sick. So I was like, excuse me, professor, this little one, he's a little sick, and I really want to take this test. And he's like, sure, take a seat. Wow. No problem. You know? Yes. So yeah, we do what we need to do. And a lot of our moms know that, you know, we've done things. And
I used to have my sons, I had this job I had to go to every day. And so I remember making a bed like under my desk and having my sick kid under there with their pillow and their little Game Boys and snacks under there. Answering phone calls and stuff. Yes. What you got to do, you know.
Yes.
It can be challenging. So
definitely.
Oh my gosh. So fast forward, then as they got a little bit older and you got through school, then I know you got into a relationship in 2003. That was a pivotal time for you. Maybe you can speak to that a little bit.
Yeah. So I had been single since I had gotten divorced, and, you know, I'd hang out with my girlfriends and we'd go out and whatnot, but never really into a relationship. And we hang out one of these days and I meet this, person, and, we hit it off really well, from the moment. It was just, it's almost one of those people that you think, wow, it seems like I've known you forever. And, things just spiraled really quick, and we went from dating to moving in to being together. And the relationship for the first probably year was it was good. We were good. We were good for each other.
The boys were living with you at the time too.
They were both living with me. And, you know, again, looking back, it's like, oh, they started to sort of want to spend more time with her dad. We used to share weekend custody, and during the week he'd pick them up a couple of hours, but it became very much more like, oh, you know, we want to stay at my dad's this weekend. So it would become weekend after weekend. And initially I thought, oh, that's good. You know, at the age they are, they're bonding with their dad. It's good. And, but come to find out, they hadn't really taken to him. And in later realizing, we became very, you know, he was abusive in the sense of like very verbally abusive. And I didn't realize it in the moment because he's Arabic. And so he would say a lot of things in Arabic that you don't need to know Arabic to know.
Right.
It's disrespectful.
Yeah.
So that sort of spiraled into, just really negative energy.
It slowly erodes your sense of who you are over time, and it's so gradual you don't even realize you're being diminished.
Yes.
That your soul is slowly being diminished because it becomes normal. That day after day of them just kind of chipping at you and just cutting you a little bit at a time.
Yeah.
Your soul and your light starts to dim.
Yes. So having been single for a really long time and making things happen for myself, and I thought, you know, here I am, very independent, strong. I'm getting things done, raising my kids, working, going to school. Something happens where you're right. Just they chip away at that, and I didn't realize it was happening in the moment. But
I don't think women in that situation do realize it until there's almost nothing left of you, and you have to make a choice, and you have to choose you.
Yes. And, you know, in the moment before I came out at the end of choosing me, everything was about, you know, superficial and how you look and, you know, your hair and your makeup and what you were wearing. So everything had to be very fit, proper, appropriate.
So much work. It's so much work to keep that illusion alive.
Which I'm girly girl. Like, I don't mind that. I love being doted over. You know, It was great. But when it became a sense of duty, I was like, wait a minute, right? And then the slow picking away at your friends and who they are and how they think they're not good for you. And then you're doubting yourself. So the distance between you and your friends and your family become a factor.
You start to become isolated, and that's what they want, right? They want to slowly kind of cull you from the herd, and then got you.
Yes. So at one point I was like, I'm so sad. I'm so miserable. And again, everything was about looks.
Sure.
So I think initially, subconsciously, I just started to like eat. And I remember the moment when I opened the fridge one day and I thought, if I get fat, he'll leave.
Are you serious? You really had that thought?
I honest to God.
Oh my God.
I'm literally door open and I'm like, that's the solution.
Oh my gosh.
I seriously.
Really?
And I did. I look back now, I was like, what were you thinking? Why couldn't you just say, we're done? You know what I mean?
Yeah. And that's so interesting that you had to almost push him out and make it think it was his idea or something.
Yes. Like, oh, what happened to you? I'm out of here. You know what I mean? And sure enough, it just became this like routine of like, and he's like, yeah, a pattern of like eating too much, overeating. I would often, things I would normally say no to, sweets, whatever. Oh yes, sure. Seconds, definitely. And he made comments, but it wasn't, if you get fat, I'll leave you. And I was waiting for that moment, like, honestly.
Right.
And again, I think it's just whatever I created in my head that I wanted to see happen. And at one point I just thought, okay, this isn't working.
Yeah. But also I think that a lot of people turn to food for comfort too when they're in emotional pain.
Yeah.
Maybe that's part of it too. I don't know. So
So, you know, he ended up having to go back to his country. And it was sort of a deportation brought upon years of having been dealing with how he entered the country and whatnot. So he basically got a letter and he said, you know, by December 2005, you need to have left the country.
And he took for you.
Girl, you don't
he
even
literally
know.
got a letter that said leave. That's amazing.
Yes. By December, whatever the date was of 2005, you need to be out.
Gosh.
And he just took that so seriously. And he says, okay, so here's the plan. You're going to fly over and you're going to marry me and then bring me back. And I was like, okay.
Oh my God. Wow.
I know. So he packed and he bought gifts for all his family and he left and we stayed in contact for a minute. And, and I changed my phone number.
Oh my God. Really?
And, well, I filed for divorce because we had been married here. I filed for divorce. I had it sent over to his country, and all he had to do was sign the return registered receipt, and he didn't. He knew what it was, so he sent it back blank. And I was like, oh my God, how is this going to happen, right? So at that point, he kept calling and harassing me, so I changed my phone number. And I thought, well, if he ever gets back to the country, he knows where I live. We lived here together. I need to move. And so I left the comfort of a very inexpensive apartment that I had raised my kids in for almost 10 years.
Wow.
Not only to not be in that space of him being able to find me, because things got really bad. But so we weren't allowed to have pets at this time. And I grew up with pets. I grew up in a house. I grew up loving my dogs. And I just felt so sad that my kids didn't have this. And I thought, here's the opportunity. I get to leave, go into an apartment complex that accepts us having pets. And things just kind of evolved after that. So I moved, changed my phone number. My kids got their first dog. They were in heaven. I was out of this relationship. We ended up being able to have him sign the paperwork and the registered return receipt eventually. And I moved forward with the divorce and moved on with my life. Got my master's.
Incredible.
Graduated, continued working where I was at the agency. I till this day, I love this agency. They do great work in the community, but they provided my internship hours and I worked there for a total of 5 years.
You've been there a long time. You've had a relationship with this agency for a long time.
I had at that point. I was there for a total of 5 years. And I'm really good friends with some of the girls that are still there.
Wow.
And then I just kind of moved on and trying to figure out what I wanted to do for myself. So I went to another agency. I've worked for the Gang Reduction Youth Program in the LA County area, which was a great experience.
Wow.
And then I moved over to the agency where I'm at, providing mental health services, finally got licensed, been a supervisor. And then as of recently, an adjunct professor over at my college at the university.
That's so cool. How did that come about?
You know, the universe just always has.
It's got your back, girl. I'll tell you.
I'm telling you. So funny thing is that when I was at this school, the two girls that I was in school with, we would often tease and say, we're going to take over this program one day. Love the Latino Family Program. It really just helps students learn the Spanish language that you'll be providing to your clients and to the families. Mm-hmm. And you know, sometimes words are translated in a very different way. So you just want to make sure that you're coming across to a Latino client in a way that is going to be beneficial to them. So this program really helps because the class from beginning to end, it's from 5 to 9 p.m. It's done in Spanish. So your conversations with as a supervisor and the students, you're constantly having a conversation in Spanish. So your Spanish definitely just gets that much better.
Absolutely.
So love this program. And, you know, our girlfriends and I, we would be like, one of these days we're going to take over this program. And fast forward to a few years later, the director was in the process of really setting forth his retirement. And it took him a few years, but that helped introduce Adriana into the program where she became the Latino Family Program Director. And then she brought me in as a co-director because it's just so enriching to the students to just be able to have different perspectives.
Sure.
Right. So, at part of doing the group therapy, the group supervision, the professor, the director had to be out for a couple of weeks. So Adriana and I ended up doing the teaching of the community mental health courses for him. And then this last year, she and I traded off those courses and continued providing classes. Mm-hmm. So it just kind of wove in.
Wow.
You know,
it's kind of like you just kept taking that next step and it led to the next step and the next opportunity. And you held that vision and you just kept kind of being pulled into your future, right?
Yes. Yes.
Like you guys, how cool to have the vision and then get there. That must have. Did you ever have like a pinch me moment where you guys were looking at each other like, oh my God, we did this?
I think for me, and I don't know if she caught it, was that we were over at the director's home getting information because he had a family emergency, which was why he wasn't going to be able to teach the course that year. I'm sitting across from her at his home this day, and I looked at her like, we're here. We've arrived.
So cool. That's like a pinch me moment, right?
Yes.
We did this.
And later on, we have conversations, and we often talk about the universe, and and how you set intentions, and basically they come looking for you. And I said, we set this intention years ago, and look at it, here it is.
Yeah, you don't know really the timing of when things are going to be delivered.
Exactly.
But boy, when they show up, it's magic, isn't it?
Exactly.
when you realize, wow, we did this. I did this.
We did this. We're here.
Created this life.
Yeah.
And your story is so powerful because it really is about you being a master creator and manifester in your life. Maybe truly realizing it at the time. But if you think back, every obstacle you overcame, that you just kept moving forward, the universe just kept opening that door a little wider and saying, come on in, you know? And you step. It's so powerful.
Yeah.
So inspirational. That's not even half of your story. It's a whole nother element that I want to explore, which was tied to this weight gain that you had, been experiencing over the years.
Yeah.
So let's speak a little bit about that a little bit, because I know you experienced a lot of different emotion around it. And I guess one day you decide, I'm going to do something about this.
Yeah. So that's initially how it started. And, come to find out, it's really easy to gain weight. Who knew?
It sure is.
Right? So I went back to school. I was in my master's program. It was stressful, full-time job, full-time internship, my children, life, etc. I was still trying to hang out with the girls and have a drink here and there. And so more weight crept on. I became, there was the time period where I was really depressed because I thought, here I am, I'm so heavy. I'm never going to be in a relationship. Who's going to want me like this? Those things that we just kind of like let our mind run with. Yeah. And so I went to the doctor. They put me on medication. They put me on medication up front that seriously, I gained 13 pounds in 1 month.
Oh my gosh.
And I know my eating habits, but that was a lot to do. No. So I got off that medication. So the weight just kind of kept adding on. I ended up going to therapy for a little bit, which works.
Yes.
I worked out a couple of things and I thought, okay, wait a minute. What am I going to do about this weight? So I started exercising, trying to eat healthier. So for a few years, I was on and off diets, in and out of gyms. I was either intimidated by the big gyms. I would go to the lady gyms, but nothing just really ever stuck. I just felt like I had so much going on in my life that something had to always give. Yeah. And normally the gym and the food.
Of course. Yeah.
So, a few years ago, I kept getting heavier, and at my highest weight, I started experiencing a lot of health issues. My knees hurt all the time. My ankles, I felt, were going to buckle. I was pre-diabetic, amongst other health issues, like even just walking up the stairs was difficult. Yeah. So I'd been seeing my doctor, and she's so sweet. I see her till this day, and she says, Liliana, have you thought about bariatric surgery? And I thought, my insurance doesn't cover it. Have I thought about it? Yes. Am I afraid of it? Yes. But my insurance doesn't cover it. And she says, yes, it does. I was like, no, you're mistaken. I've asked already. She says, with my recommendation, it'll cover it.
Wow.
And I was like, oh, are you recommending surgery? What are we talking about? Yeah.
Clear here.
You're right. She says there's a process and there's classes and there's a couple of things that you need to do. It's a 6-month process. Are you in? And I'm like, yes.
Wow.
So it was scary because I had heard and read a lot about like the side effects, the negativity, just the thought about being under and never coming out and like abandoning my kids that way.
Sure. A lot of fears around that had to be.
So many fears. So many. So I took the course 6 months, which was great. It really helped you put things into perspective. You got to talk to people that had been through the surgery. You had to join support groups. And I thought, I think I'm going to move forward with this.
Wow.
So December of 2015, I had my surgery. And as of Monday, that I don't weigh myself often anymore. well, let me backtrack. So in a year, I lost about maybe 50 pounds slowly, which was really helpful because my skin, has really kept up with it.
Naturally kind of adjusted.
Yes. So in January of 2018, I thought, I think I'm at the point where I can go to a gym, right? So I got into this boot camp. I went from 6 weeks to 12 weeks, which was really beneficial in getting me into this routine.
Wow.
And I lost about a total of like 15 pounds in it. And that was not the expectation. The expectation was way more, but I really enjoyed going into it. So I was like, okay, this is doable. And then afterwards, I just joined a regular gym and I started going about minimum 4 times a week.
Wow.
And I've kept it up, which has been really interesting because it was one of the things. So one of the things I realized is that 4:00 a.m. for me is my time. So I realized 4 a.m., nobody else is up. I can get up, get ready, go to the gym. There's not a lot of people at the gym. Love it.
I see your check-ins like 5 a.m. at the gym, like every day. I'm like, oh my gosh, she's killing it right now.
Except Saturday and Sundays, because I'm like, I do not exercise on the weekends.
I'm so impressed. I was so impressed.
And it's interesting because the check-ins initially were mandatory through the boot camp, which I despise. And I was like, I feel cheated. Nobody told me I had to check in. This is ridiculous. I don't want people to know my business.
There's this accountability too, right?
There was. And then after I stopped going to the boot camp, it just became my own accountability.
Right.
Right. So it feels good to be able to check in with yourself and saying, I am here. I am doing it.
Yes.
And so I've been
inspiring the rest of us too.
And I've had a couple of, thank you.
We're seeing that every day going, man, I better get out and do something today and move my body.
I've had so many girlfriends reach out and saying, hey, I need inspiration. What are you doing? Awesome. Where are you going? So that's been really, really great as well. So till Monday that I last weighed myself again, because I don't weigh myself all the time, I've lost 108 pounds.
Oh my God. That's incredible. Congratulations.
Thank you.
So proud of you.
Thank you.
That's incredible.
And I know that when you and I met at the coaching class, I was at my heaviest.
Yeah, we did some coaching around.
We did.
We partnered up.
Of the surgery. Yes.
Pair up and do coaching with each other. So we did pair up, and that was one of the things that we talked about. So
that's right.
Here, so vibrant and healthy and inspiring the rest of us is so powerful. Congratulations. You don't even realize the people you impact around you just by showing up in your life and being the best version of you. You don't even realize that when you're posting that you're at the gym every day, I look at the phone and see you're there 5:30 in the morning or 5 a.m. Man, she's pretty incredible.
Wow. Thank you.
So keep it up and congratulations. I mean,
thank you.
You must feel amazing.
There's no words for it, right? There's no words to being able to walk into a store and not walk into a specialty store. Right? Or the plus section.
Right.
There's part of me that's like, oh my God, I had invested so much money in this wardrobe because I'm in this work field and I have to look presentable. And I've let go of all of that. And I thought, it's out. And now I'm like, well, if I buy clothes and I lose a little bit more weight, wait a minute, I can't, So I'm like, that's a good problem to have. I'm not even worried about that. But it does feel amazing. And it feels good to be able to get up and walk. And I did zip lining for the first time ever in my life. And I was like, I would never have been able to do this 2 years ago.
Right.
I was afraid people would be like, oh, I think the cutoff weight is, whether it was or it wasn't. Yeah. But to be able to, we were in Tulum and we had to walk miles to get from, ended up walking miles, but to get from one place to the other, it's like this spiral uphill thing because you kept going higher and higher and higher. And I kept thinking 2 years ago, 3 years ago, 4 years ago, I would not have. I would have been huffing and puffing. So just the opportunities that have opened up, like socially, going out, being able to be part of things that you weren't. Even when I sit in an airplane, I just, like I said, I just flew back from seeing my son in Oregon.
Yeah.
To be able to sit in the airplane chair and be able to buckle comfortably and have like a little like side pocket next to your hip. Yeah. I'm like, oh my God, there's space.
Right?
Those little things, being able to tie your shoes without huffing and puffing, you know?
Yeah.
So there's so many.
I mean, there's this incredible external transformation, but tell me what it was like to go through there's a huge internal shift and transformation that happens too, I would think.
You know,
going through this process.
How do I explain that? There's moments that the struggle became, I knew it wasn't eating for me, right? And I think that's been really helpful because during these classes, you kind of try to figure out what kind of, why you gain the weight. Right. And a lot of people shared, I'm an emotional eater. And I thought maybe I knew it. I remembered again that day I opened the fridge and I thought, oh my God, here's my answer. Yeah. And I thought, I know that's not me. Right. And I knew in my heart it wasn't about emotional eating. So I often, when I'm going to eat something at this point, I'm like, is it because I'm hungry? Right. So there's been these internal conversations about why did I do what I did? So a lot of it for me was in this relationship, being in the place that I was, and being able to really, when it really came down to it, it was a lot of like building an emotional shield out of fat to really push away people. Right. So, and you know, there's a lot of obviously history and, you know, I didn't grow up like, you know, in a castle or anything. I mean, life happened and, you know, we all go through certain types of, situations in our life. Sure. And having endured some abuse very early on, I realized that you need to protect your body in a way. And having come into the situation of being married with this person, and I thought building this shield, that's the way I keep people away. That's going to help me. So I realized I did a lot of internal conversation with that. And I talked to my therapist about it too. And there was a point where I thought, I can keep anybody at bay, especially in an intimate type of relationship in that manner. So when I worked through that, I thought, okay, I realized what I was doing to myself.
That's really powerful. When you start to go in and unpack those deep programs and thoughts and feelings. So many people avoid that at all costs. Like, I'm not going to go there. I'm just going to keep doing what I'm doing because I can't deal with actually facing my truth and myself.
Right.
I honor you for having that awareness and determination to really unpack everything that was hurting you, creating fear, and then transmuting it, overcoming it, and creating this beautiful life that probably could never have come into your experience if you hadn't done all of that internal work, right?
I agree.
You had this powerful transformation professionally, physically, emotionally, spiritually, probably, from having the courage to just look at yourself and say, there it is.
I'm gonna get raw and real with yourself.
Oh God, it's so hard, isn't it? This painful crawl out.
You know, and that's the interesting part, because yes, it's the crawl, it's the unknown, it's the fear. And then once you're there, it's like, there was moments I was like, really? This is what you were afraid of? Really? And then there's parts of me that I remember, you know, the little girl in me and thinking, yeah, this was scary. That's why I would keep people. That's why I would do X, Y, and Z. So as scary as it is, being in it is, and here's the thing for me, having been in it in the moment, thinking of why I was doing what I was doing was not as bad as when it was happening.
Right. Right.
So when I realized, I'm like, I've gone through the worst.
Right.
Thinking about it and realizing why I'm doing what I'm doing is not as bad as having been there.
Right.
So.
Right. That's such great perspective, right?
Yeah.
To know that, wait, you already survived the trauma.
Yes.
You've already survived the trauma. You don't need to stay in the trauma because you've already survived the trauma. You just have to shift the story.
Exactly.
Emotion attached to the trauma.
Exactly.
Right? Which is so powerful to actually move through it and release it.
Exactly. And that's what I learned. I realized, why are you still there? Why is it still in your head? Why are you still worried about it? You know, forgive yourself for that. Forgive yourself for having looked into the fridge and said, here's my answer. Forgive yourself for that. It's fine. It's what you had in the moment.
Yeah.
You're in a different place. Move forward.
Exactly. I think we forget that we are not our past.
All the time.
Right?
All the time.
We have to hold on to that story or repeat the behavior or beat ourselves up or have shame or whatever it is around in our past when it's over. We get
to
create a different reality, a different future, a different life for ourselves. But so often we're just tied to this one event in the past we can't move past or behavior pattern or whatever it is.
Right.
But how powerful that you were able to shift that and release it. And I just feel like you're unstoppable. I want to keep putting capital letters like inspirational, unstoppable, motivational, courageous. Every time I think about you, my heart just expands and fills with love and joy for you. What you're doing in your life. It's just so powerful. So.
Creating. I love that word, creating your life, because we all have the opportunity to create. We all have, everybody has that ability. Yes. How you set it forward, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
So what's next for you? Congratulations. I know you just closed on your home. You're a home.
My first home.
In California. That's like a miracle, right?
Yes.
Oh my gosh. Tell me about how that came about.
Well, again, you know, a year ago, talk about setting intentions, right? A year ago, I heard about this program that our county helps out its constituents, its residents, help them get a home. I heard it from a neighbor and I thought, oh, let me look into it. So I went to the orientation, great program. I was like, okay, I'm going to do this. So I met with a counselor and they're like kind of a credit counselor. And they looked at my finances and they said, okay, we need to close this credit card, pay this off, have X amount of money in the bank, and I'll see you in July. So this was June of last year. And I thought, okay, sounds like a plan. So I was working on paying off the 2 cards they had told me. And my thought driving home, because it was up in Upland, driving home, I thought, next July, I'm going to be in my home.
Oh my gosh. Really?
Next July, by July, I'm going to have my home. I didn't know how. I really thought this program was going to be what worked out for me. So as the time progressed, my landlord, which I had been in my my beautiful, lovely townhome. I love my landlord. She was great to me for all the time I was there. She says, "Hey, Liliana, I'm thinking of selling the townhome." So
you're kidding me.
Oh my. She says, "I told you that you would have first dibs on purchasing it. So I'm just giving you the heads up.
Oh my gosh.
In a couple of months, you know, I'll let you know." She wanted to do some remodeling or whatever. She says, but I just want to let you know now. I said, okay, sounds good. So that might have been like in September, October of last year. So by December, I hadn't heard from her. And I thought, hey, you know, what are we doing? And she says, I'm working on it. I had other projects. She does real estate. So she goes, I have a couple other projects going on. I'll get back to you. Oh, 3 more months passed by. So by March, a few more months passed by, but by March, she calls me and she says, hey, so I'm moving forward with selling. Are you still interested? And I was like, yes. Like, I didn't want to move. I didn't want to pack.
Sure.
I loved my townhome. It was central. I'd been there for such a long time. And it's just it was a nice, quiet place. And I thought, yeah, sure. She goes, so, call a real estate agent and figure out where we're at. I said, okay. So we did all the paperwork and she's selling outside of my price range. And I was like, oh, well, I can't. There's no way, even if I had the price range right, like the payment, like it was just not going to work out. So I tell my real estate person, I said, look, I love this place. I'm not married to it. So find me something because she's selling regardless. Mm-hmm. And he's like, okay, great. So he started trying to find some places for me. And I was like, no. And I had seen, here's the funny thing. I had seen this place posted a few years ago. And I knew it was a home that I wanted because one of the pictures, the view from the window was spectacular. Never saw the home in person. I saw one picture and I was like, oh my God, that's so beautiful. Imagine to wake up to that every day.
Stuck with you all these years.
I had seen it prior. So then my real estate guy is like, what about this home? What about this home? And there are a bunch of townhomes that were in my price range. And I thought, no, I'm like, I love my kids, but they're grown. They're doing their own thing. Right. My baby's 22. My oldest is 24. I'm like, my concern was my dogs. Am I going to have a space for my dogs? Oh, gosh. This home belongs to your pets. They enjoy it more than place. You. Yeah. Right?
Yeah, I know.
So I said, hey, I found this place so I was online looking for myself and I thought, this looks really familiar. So I'm going through the pictures. I'm like, oh my God, it's the same home. It has this view, right? So I'm like, hey, what about this home? He's like, oh no, we can't do that home because your loan doesn't qualify you. And I was like, but in the small print right here, I texted him a picture and I circled the thing. And I'm like, right here, it says it does. And he's like, oh, let me look into it. We came on a Saturday. And as soon as I drove up the street, I was like, this is it. This is it. The owner gave us a little tour. I'm like, can I see the window? Can I just see the window? Oh, he's like, the view? And I was like, the view. I walked over and I was like, this is it. I didn't want to sound too desperate, but I was like, make an offer. We walked away and told the guy we'd be making an offer. Whatever happened, it was Mother's Day weekend. So we're in May. And it takes us a minute to do an offer, but the gentleman calls his person that calls my real estate guy and says, hey, the owner really liked this buyer and fell in love with her boys. My boys came with me and they had this conversation about who was doing what and whatever. And he says he really wants her to have this home. So he had gotten 2 other offers after I left.
I'm getting emotional. Like I want to right now.
It was just meant to be. He waited.
I'm seriously like.
He waited for our offer. And he says, I want her to have it. And sure enough.
So incredible. I'm getting chills. Oh my God.
That's the way it worked out. So we closed and got keys July 2nd.
Look at me, I'm crying.
Just closed and got keys July 2nd.
I can't believe it.
So back last year in June, I said, I will be in my home in July. I got keys July 2nd. And that didn't hit me until a couple of days later. Yeah.
I need to get you on my manifesting team because you're like a queen manifester. God. Congratulations. I am just
Thank you.
Moved by you. Your story is so humbling and incredible, and you're such an amazing person.
Thank you, Wendy. You're going to make me cry. Stop.
I know, I can't stop crying. I'm just so proud of you.
Thank you.
So much for being you. That's incredible.
Thank you.
Anyway, I think I better wrap this up because I can't seem to stop crying. But, Liliana, thank you so much for sharing your story and being on my show. It's been so awesome.
My honor.
I always ask, do you have any parting words or words of wisdom to share with
my goodness,
people who might be going through similar adversity and difficulties in their lives?
I think one is it's easy to say love yourself, but take time for yourself to be able to fall in love with yourself.
Yeah.
Because once you do that, sky's the limit. You know what you can take, what you can't take. Your creativity juices just kind of like ooze out of you. And creatively meaning like what you're going to do, what you're going to plan, where you're going to go, you're going to travel, you're not going to travel, you're going to take this job, you're not going to take this job. It just takes on a different persona when
the
you
energy
realize
starts to just expand, like all of
it.
You're in this space of creation instead of contraction, right?
So take time to fall in love with yourself. And don't let that be a one date kind of deal. That's a constant. Date yourself, love yourself, honor yourself, believe in yourself, manifest, put it out there because it happens.
Magic. Oh my God, that's so beautiful. Well, thank you so, so much for joining me today, making me cry. This is the first time I've actually cried on my show. Next time I'm going to have Kleenex in case what's going to happen. But to all of you who joined us today, thank you so much for tuning into The Path of Me. And I hope if this resonates with you, you subscribe, like, and share. I will put my email address down below so you can contact me if you have any comments or questions. And Liliana, what a beautiful journey. I can't wait to see what the next 30 years holds for you. This has just been an amazing ride. I love you so much. And to all my viewers, I love y'all. Have an incredible day today, and don't forget to love yourself. Thank you.